In contemporary politics, compromise is seen as a virtue. We frequently hear the opponents on some issue exhort the other side to compromise. But is compromise a good thing? That depends. For example, let's say my friends want to go eat Italian and I would prefer Mexican, but I'd really like to spend the evening with my friends. So I might compromise and agree to go eat Italian. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no principle involved. But compromising on principles, and that's what occurs in politics, is bad. For example, let's say there is no minimum wage, and some group thinks that there should be a minimum wage established by government. So they start demanding that government impose a minimum wage. And let's say they want it to be $15, since that's a popular number today. Well, the business owner should say, no, you have no right to dictate to me how to operate my business. It's my property. I have a right to use it as I choose. I have a right to establish whatever terms and conditions, including wages, that I think are best for my business. And my employees have a right to accept or reject those terms and conditions. But what if he decides to compromise? What if he says, look, $15 is going too far, but I'd agree if you establish a minimum wage of, let's say, $10. And so he compromises. Well, he loses. He's lost the entire game at that point because he's compromised on a principle. He's ceded the ability and the freedom to use his property as he chooses, and he's given that power to government. So what happens? At some point down the road, groups will start demanding that the minimum wage be raised. And let's say they again demand $15 an hour. Well, he can't defend himself on principle any longer because he's already ceded the principle that government has the authority, the proper authority, to dictate how he uses his property. So all he can do is argue once again that $15 is going too far. And maybe he'll compromise and the other side will compromise and they'll agree on $12.50 an hour, let's say. But over time they'll keep making more demands, and over time he'll keep compromising, and eventually they'll get what they originally wanted. And if we look at almost any property rights issue, this is what occurs. Some group will make outrageous demands at first, and businessmen and property owners will compromise and meet somewhere in the middle, and then down the road those groups come back demanding more. And again, compromises are made, and slowly over time, it might be years, it might be decades, those groups get what they originally intended, or what they originally wanted. And it's because compromises were made at the beginning. The principle of property rights was compromised when the original business owners or property owners agreed to meet somewhere in the middle rather than assert their right to use their property as they choose. So when we compromise on principle, it can only lead to destructive consequences and a complete surrender of the principles involved.